Hello, everyone. And first of all, sorry for the little delay. We had like some technical problems here, but now it's all working, which is fascinating because yeah, we cover quite a few time zones, which is nowadays like in the Corona times, having all the Zoom meetings. I think, yeah, we get used to these kind of things. And well, we've got a really hot topic here, I think, which is about the crisis and the recovery with the coronavirus. And this current situation, which is like just surreal, and yeah, it still feels like that, and I'm still like surprised how such a tiny virus really stopped the whole world just like in a couple of weeks. Who would have thought that in beginning of March? And the travel industry got hit quite hard, and I personally would have not thought that we would be able to speak about traveling again. In Europe, this is already starting for a couple of weeks now. And our background with the speakers here is like travel blogging and working online and with social media. And so what we do is like we create a lot of content, and the topic is also about that, creating and sharing the right content. And yeah, just like to get right into it, I would like to share my screen and introduce the whole group. Should be able to see this now. So here we are. We all know each other for quite a long time, and we've been working together over many, many years. We've been on conference together, speaking about and sharing our experiences. And I would like to start with Janice. Janice is a founder and publisher and contributor to the Solo Traveler website. She has a long history as an entrepreneur, like running her own trade show and conference business. But since she launched the Solo Traveler website in 2009, it has grown to a huge readership, and she has been like really successful to get the Solo Traveler industry behind her, the industry, but also like a lot of travelers. Then we also have Keith, who is here on the screen on the right, second on the right. Keith was in his former career like banking. Was an investment banking in his career, and he traveled the world and started at that moment also his travel blog Velvet Escape, which is focused on luxury travel. 2011, Keith founded iAmbassador and began offering social media and marketing services. iAmbassador won multiple awards for the campaigns and had a big impact on shaping and creating a professional travel blogger industry. With that, we also started the Social Travel Summit, which we try to really form and shape the future of travel blogging, where we discuss what's going wrong on in the travel industry, but also we try to find solutions. But we will get into that as well, because I think we have on the left, we have Rachel. Rachel is a blogger, writer, speaker, and television host. Her blog, The Travel Bite, has been featured in People magazine, Food and Wine, and Travel Leisure. She is also, you might have seen her also on the Travel Channel as a video journalist, and she regularly appears on live television as a culinary brand ambassador and shopping network. And we come to Becky. Becky Enright is a British Travel Press Award-winning writer and PR consultant whose work focuses on changing perceptions about misunderstood aspects of destinations. Her writing combines storytelling with insight into the social, historical, political, and economic factors that shape the country or place in relation to tourism. She also runs her blog for a long, long time, so she got lots of experience with that. Then we have Michael, who is sitting right now in Australia, joining us from there. And Michael is a former television and radio journalist who decided it would be more rewarding to travel the world and find his own stories. For more than 9 years, he runs his website Time Travel Turtle. At the moment, he's traveling in Australia, like I said, and sharing his stories on a new website, Travel Australia Today. Then to myself, I run Travel Dudes. Travel Dudes is an industry leader with the field of travel influencer marketing. It's a social media platform. It's focused on traveling. It's a big community, but we also have our own team of content producers. So in partnership with clients, we create cost-effective, inspirational, and engaging travel content for digital and social platforms. In the last 3 years, we have focused on producing videos for our own distribution, of our own travel guide show. When I was on another conference, I was once introduced, and I think that also fits for everyone joining us here as a speakers, but I was introduced as a pioneer of blogging. I think that sounds very nice because it sounds more wise and experienced than just old. And yeah, I personally run Travel Dudes already full-time for 14 years, which is a bit scary already. Yeah, that was the team. I think at this moment we can like stop sharing the screen and we can get into the discussion and about sharing and creating the right content. We are now in the Corona time. People talk a lot about that travel is going to change. And before we get really into that, I mean, the first couple of weeks, I think everyone was just like stunned to see, like I said earlier, like the virus stops the world. And I've seen that many tourism boards and brands, how they reacted to that. Some really stopped doing anything. Some were sharing content. And for my blogger friends here, how did you share this, or how did you experience this situation? How did you stop? What did you do with your content? Were you sharing content? What have you seen outside? Maybe Rachel, please go ahead.
Oh my goodness. I think I tried to keep it as real as possible. I had content scheduled, and so I paused the scheduling and tried to do it more live, where I was sharing live and then also communicating in my comments and captions about what was really happening, that we're home. We bought a house in the middle of this crisis too. So we were trying to be more real about what was going on behind the scenes and in real life. And still doing that. I also write about food when I travel. So I've been transitioning to writing more about cooking at home and bringing those recipes and the taste of travel in your own kitchen. So that's how I've transitioned to sharing in this time.
I've seen that actually quite with a few bloggers who have been switching their content from food to travel. Is that working for you?
For me, it's kind of saved my site, because for my own blog, for my website, all of the traffic for the travel articles kind of went down about 40%. But the recipes went up 30%, so it kind of plateaued and balanced out. But it's been a scramble to pivot so quickly and to change so quickly. It's something that I already used to write about, but to put those front and center and to put those at the top of my homepage and my blog. What's interesting though is on social media, at least on Instagram, those posts don't get nearly as much engagement as my travel posts. So I still try and do some travel related posts, but I post about where I look forward to traveling to, or I try and tell stories. I certainly don't make it seem like I'm in that area. Like here's a picture of where I was last summer, and I'm looking forward to going there again. So yeah, it's just been a transition and just pivoting. And I think some people are doing it really well, and some people are ignoring the problem. And here in the United States, we have other issues too going on right now. So it's been very volatile, and having to change our content on a daily basis. Check the news and check Twitter in the morning and see what's appropriate.
Yeah, well, I think you're lucky because like with the food, that's something like you've been into. If I would have started that, it would have been a disaster. My cooking is not as good as my eating then.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, yeah. I completely agree. Like in the US, there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
Like with you others, like what is your content experience? Like, or maybe like, have you seen any, what was your feeling about the content others were producing and sharing? Becky, do you have examples? What's your opinion on that?
In terms of, I think bloggers and brands, I think there was a legitimate cause and grief stage where people were either panicking and projected that in some way in content, or they were silent because they were in shock. Or there was a lot of people that held back from saying anything, which is a good thing in a recovery, because you need the facts before you can say anything. And I think all of those feelings were legitimate, and people reacting differently. There's nothing wrong with that either. And it's the same for brands. Like, this is the first time any of us and any of our DMO colleagues and tourism destinations as a whole have ever had to go through something like this. So I think there isn't a right way to react, and there wasn't a right way to react, and there wasn't one way to react. And I think that's something we have to keep in mind. I think it's easy to finger point and say, "Oh, that wasn't the best way, and we should have done it this way." But none of us have ever done this. None of us, and especially not this big and so long lasting. And then you had the people that shared, really fun kind of, destination videos, which were in the vein of like, see you soon, and like when you come back, it's going to be like this, and don't worry, like in time we'll bounce back again, and we'll see you here. So there was some kind of fun, positive, forward-thinking things as well. And then you had people that were super clever and creative, like the Faroe Islands, who were like, hey, it doesn't matter that you can't come here. Like, we have this guide, and you can tell him where to go, and we'll do virtual experiences. Yeah. So I think it was a jumble of everything for me.
Actually, that is a very good example, which I've seen as well. Can you explain that a bit more, what they have done there? Because I think not everyone knows about that.
So there was like a hiking guide. I think it's one or two main people, but I think initially it was, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he was a hiker. And I tuned into one where somebody was on a boat. And what you would do is you would sign up, and because there was hundreds of people, it ended up being quite hard to get a chance to, there was like a virtual control on the screen, like playing a video game. And what you could do is that when it was your turn, you could, say, go left, go right, jump up and down, run. And these guides got exhausted, especially the hiking guide. It was like, you people kept making me jump all the time. But it was just a fun way for someone to, rather than just look at a static picture or, watch another video, it was a chance to actually be there as if you were with that guide, but with a really fun element where people were just exhausting these poor people. But it got such good press coverage, and it was one way of saying, we're an isolated place. We're lucky that we don't have as many COVID cases. However, we're still not getting the tourism footfall, but we're doing something that allows you to be here with us. So it was a great example.
Yeah, I really like that as well. And when I saw that with those, like you said, with the controller, I was like, wow, running and jumping on the Faroe Islands, that sounds a bit dangerous with all those cliffs around. But I haven't seen it in action, but I will really have to look this up again, because that was like, what a brilliant idea. Michael, I know that you are traveling in Australia right now. So you are one of the first, I guess, who are really in action back in travel mode. First of all, how does that feel, being back on the road?
I'd forgotten what it was like to have to like be on time to places and wear pants. So yeah, it's all a bit weird. But yeah, no, I mean, in Australia, Australia, I think, was quite lucky in some respects compared to a lot of other countries, in that internally we were able to control the virus to a large extent. But the sort of downside of that is that the Australian government is talking about not opening our borders for at least 6 months, maybe another 12 months. And so, for me, who focused on international travel, I had to sort of look at how I was going to run my blogging business in the short term, medium term even, to be honest, and decided that pivoting towards traveling in Australia, which is something I've always wanted to do anyway, was the right approach. And so, yeah, already I'm working quite constructively with state tourism boards here in Australia. I've been doing, I think I've done 5 trips in the last 5 weeks, all with tourism boards, and starting to explore the region around me, and soon I'll be going to some of the other states around Australia as well, going further afield.
Where are you right now?
So I'm on the south coast of New South Wales, near a place called Jervis Bay. If anyone's been here, it's apparently has the whitest sand in Australia, they say. And tomorrow I'm going out on a boat to go swimming with whales, as long as the whales come. Well, sorry, whales will be swimming with me is probably a better way to put it. So let's see how it goes.
How boring! I prefer my home office. Like when you go out there, okay, you said the travelers you approach now, they are other Australians. How do you what kind of language do you use? No, okay, English, obviously. But how
English,
do you approach
yeah.
that?
Okay.
Like, how do you handle the situation? How do you explain what restrictions are there? What do you encourage? Is it more inspiring content? What kind of content do you produce?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Australians are probably like a lot of people around the world, that you always think, oh, I'll explore my own country later. I'll use these years when I'm young and active and fit to go and see the world. And so there are a lot of people here who haven't seen places that are 3 hours drive away, yet they've been to Europe a dozen times over their life. And so people are certainly very interested in engaging with their own country here, seeing more in depth what is just around the corner, how our communities are all connected. And
but do you talk
I
about
think
the coronavirus and the situation, or like if you, well, I guess because it's Australians and there's no border cross, so everyone, are there different rules from state to state which you have to inform the people about?
Yeah, I mean, there are different rules from state to state. And in fact, just in the last 24 hours, one of the states has actually gone down into a bit more of a lockdown and isn't letting travelers from some of the other states in, other states aren't letting those travelers in. So I mean, there are some sort of things that are changing a bit. But honestly, the caseloads here were so low in the first place that people actually aren't that worried anymore about actually getting the virus. It's just sort of working within the rules and the regulations that we now have. And I think actually in some ways, in terms of talking about travel marketing generally, what's actually really important from my perspective is being very honest and talking about the reality of travel, and saying, for instance, without any spin, without any sort of coercion from the state tourism boards, it is safe to travel from Sydney and to come 3 hours south down the coast here and do what I'm doing, to go to restaurants, to go to the beach and so on. But it's unsafe to go overseas. And, our conversation might go into this, but I think actually it's really important, when bloggers are working with tourism boards, not to actually try and create some artificial untrue spin about what is safe and what is cool, and how we're all going to be back on the road living life as normal, because that's not the case. But actually looking for the opportunities that are safe now, and are relatively normal. And in my instance, that means getting in your car and driving down the coast, and probably in the next few weeks jumping on a plane and going to Brisbane or Melbourne or those kind of places. But not getting on a plane and going to any other country for months probably.
Yeah. What I see is that obviously all those different regions of countries, but not just like countries, but also the regions in the countries all have different kind of rules. And I see also that there's like two groups of people, the ones who are really scared and who are really, well, they are really strict with how they behave, and they really try to stay in the limits of those restrictions. And then you see them who break out of that and who want more the normal life, because they don't see that the virus affects them really. And I see a lot of discussions who suddenly they get really hot and heated, and in a negative kind of a way. And on top of that, so like getting to want to travel, and others who are afraid, then you have people who are staying in their own region or in their own country, which creates a situation where when you want to travel, it's so hard to really to see, okay, I'm traveling now into that destination. What can I expect from there? I think, Rachel, I mean, you live in the US. You might see that as well. So when you are traveling from state to state, it might, like going into a restaurant might look completely different for you there than where you are now, right?
Yeah.
Is that a problem in also like in sharing the right content?
Yeah, it is a problem, and it's even more micro than state to state. Even in the state of Florida, it's county by county that all have different rules. And so, for instance, I live in Orange County, which is a huge destination and tourism hotspot because of Walt Disney World and the theme parks. And right now there is a mask mandate. Right now, restaurants are only able to operate at 30% capacity. capacity. So a lot of people are doing takeout food. I am seeing a lot of them saying, we're being clean. Here's the extra precautions that we're taking. We're doing touchless check-in and touchless payments. So that way you don't have to interact with anybody. And so a lot of the hotels are doing like staycation packages, because we don't really have a lot of travelers, even from none internationally, and especially within, the United States. But then the attractions are a whole different story, and so our rules keep changing because there's another spike. And so we had sort of flattened the curve, and you really just don't care, or who think it's fake, in the United States. I think it's the only country where it's become a political issue. And so people, you have on one spectrum, people who don't want to follow the rules and who are not taking any precautions. And on the other side, you have people who are taking precautions. And so it really becomes, you have to know not just what state you're in, but what county you're in, and look up those rules, because they do keep changing. And just like, Michael's traveling around Australia, I'm probably just going to travel around Florida this year, but each part of Florida is different. And so we did get an invitation from one tourism board to go to a different city, but there's a huge spike in coronavirus there. So I'm not even sure I feel safe going there, just because it's one of the hot spots right now. Tourism, which I understand, but I don't feel comfortable there when their ICUs and their hospitals are about at capacity, and they have a huge percentage of people who have caught the virus. So it is a little different. And, so if you're going to travel right now, even, within your, I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the United States, you really have to double check each county. Since we don't really have strong leadership at the top, every municipality is taking their own approach, and every municipality has their own rules. And so really it's just finding that out and trying to do the best you can.
Yeah. Janice, you're based in Toronto. Looking over there, are you traveling? Have you been traveling in the last couple of weeks? And like, how do you cope with your content?
Yeah, when not traveling. In Canada, it's going province by province, and then within provinces, the larger municipalities have their own rules. So to travel outside of Toronto is actually fairly safe. Our numbers have come down quite well, though in the last couple of days, there's been a little bit of a rise. So, like it's very fluid. It's very, very fluid. Traveling between provinces is, there's usually a mandatory isolation period. So that makes it rather awkward, So travel within Canada is where it's going to start. Domestic travel, I think it's pretty clear, is where things are going to start in North America, but how it's going to start, and that variation, like Rochelle mentioned, is here in Canada as well. So, and as far as, oh, sorry.
Yeah, you work also like very close with brands and who, well, in trying to push solo traveling. How's your experience there? I know that you have been still, like, obviously, I think you really try to keep up the communication with your partners and clients. What do you do there?
Yeah, well, it's been interesting because, of course, no one's buying tours. And our primary market are tour companies. Our primary revenue stream is working with tour companies to advertise their tours that treat solo travelers well, and that treatment is about the single supplement, right? The surcharge that solo travelers usually experience. So, so we've been, working with them closely. A lot of communication, phone communication. It's not just, emails going back and forth, but actually talking to them on the phone. April, we gave everyone free advertising. So it was like, but it was a really strong goodwill gesture, and has kept people with us. And then we started charging, and we're increasing the rates bit by bit. We've also been communicating when we see a report that's really relevant to the tourism sector. We share it with our clients, because some of them are small, some of them are large. Not everyone sees everything. So when we see something that's really specific to tourism, we get that out to them. We also share information that we can glean from our Google Analytics and what's happening. So we can see a trend down in the 24 to 35 group, which was our, and continues to be actually our largest demo. But that's actually in decline, and over last year is about a 10% lower than this year. And the uptick has been in the 18 to 24 group, and then also 45 plus, including the 65 plus. So that's been really interesting. We see trends towards more, I'm interpreting it as more newbies coming, thinking about traveling solo because of the type of posts that have hit the top 10 list versus last year. So there's all this kind of information that we can share. And we can also share some positive news, right? So looking at how our signups for our newsletter dropped down to the single digits per day, as opposed to 40 to 50 per day, which we were running last year, dropping down to single digits. Well, this in June, last month, we were at an average of 20 per day. So there's some, some motion, some forward motion to give some optimism. It's, we do what
there's
we can.
Light. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I've used start to say, and that's something what I really didn't expect. And what I also see that, like you said, the communication, I see that communication changed a bit. Well, not the way we communicate, but it increased. We communicated far more with other people, like having Zoom calls every other day. People also got creative. I know that, for example, a blogger friend of ours, Cash the Budget Traveler, he created a complete new format with Adapt a Hostel. So he had this idea that people can like help the hostels who had obviously also a very, very hard time, and to get vouchers for that. You yourself, you also had a really good and smart idea. What is that about?
Okay, so what we did is we put together a bundle of digital products, and we called it the Travel Dreams Bundle. So all these products could be used now in terms of planning for travel, or it could be used now in terms of, working with the photographs that you've accumulated from your travels or things of that nature. So they were all digital products. There were, I don't know, about 20, 25 products in the bundle. We sold it for $49.95 through a network of travel influencers, travel bloggers, affiliates. So it was, trying to create a win-win for brands that want to keep front and center, right? And, in front of the traveler, and affiliates, the bloggers having a bit of a revenue stream. And yeah, it worked pretty well. It wasn't like over the moon. We're not planning another bundle really soon. We probably will do another, but not immediately. It's not a new business by any means, but it certainly, I think it helped a lot of people, and it was received very well. And then, one of the things that we were able to glean from it is we were able to do a survey of those people that were buying the bundle and find out what themes they might want, because we had no idea how this was going to go. Find out what themes they wanted. And certainly Europe came in number one. These are primarily North American respondents. And but then US, Canada, and nomad travel. That was the surprise. Nomad travel was right in there with North America and Canada, US, and nomad travel were about equal. So there was a surprise. More people are thinking about that than I would have expected. So, it was an opportunity to gather some information, to create a bit of momentum.
Yes, and I think what I really like about that, because you were one of the ones, like in a crisis, I mean, a lot of times you're just like paralyzed, and you just wait and you react. But you were now one of the ones who started acting yourself. And I think that is like one of the things getting out of a crisis. You need to start acting with something. And I think, yeah, like projects like these, they keep you going and motivated, and your mind also a bit fresh, instead of just being in the home office and thinking, oh, what can I do now? When is the crisis over? And yeah, I mean, yeah, you work a lot with brands. So let's, Keith, you have two positions. Like Keith, you run a travel blog, you got all that background, and you also run I Ambassador, where you run campaigns, and they are focused very much like with working with DMOs and with the different tourism boards. How is your experience with that? I mean, like right now, most people can't travel. What has happened in the last couple of weeks?
Right. Yeah. Well, in Europe, well, as you know, as you mentioned earlier, the borders are open since, well, quite a few of them, well, since today. And so, people are traveling. Companies are seeing an increased number of bookings and all that. So it's starting to come back again, which is great. And in the past couple of weeks, we've been working with a couple of tourism boards to create social media campaigns that provide inspiration and also information, and basically, to entice people to come to visit these different destinations. And that's and it's been going well. I think in none of these campaigns we've been really trying to create a huge amount of buzz or anything like that, but it's just more of just feeding information through, inspiring people, giving them ideas and tips of where to go, but also at the same time making sure that they keep an eye on the local situation, and how things can change very quickly, and just making people aware of that, and also of the different rules and regulations in different countries in Europe. So yeah, and from my blog, I've seen an uptick in traffic as well, in searches for different European destinations. So that's great. Much, very welcome. And so you do see that interest is growing, that, there is some demand there. We're not talking about 2019 numbers or whatever, but you can see demand growing, and that people are interested and they do want to travel. I live in the Netherlands, and where the Dutch people are famous as, it's big time travelers. And when I see in the news every day, I mean, obviously there are a lot of people who are planning to either stay home or stay in the country for their summer holidays. But I also see a lot of people who are, actually thinking of, or actually have already booked, and can't wait to go back to France or Spain or Italy, or one of the other European countries. And I see that in the traffic on my blog as well. So yeah.
And creating content. What are the do's and don'ts for travel bloggers? Do you have advice? I mean, like, yeah. Becky said that earlier. It's a situation no one really had as a DMO or travel blogger, especially not like worldwide. We had crisis, of course, but now it's completely different.
Yeah, I think, I mean, well, first and foremost, you have to be, I think Michael said it as well, without any additional spin or whatever, you have to relay the situation as it is, and you have to make people, well, first of all, show them that this destination's a nice place to visit, blah, 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 and these are the things you can do. But at the same time, also make them aware of the different restrictions, and how to, and but also show them that, that if you go to a restaurant or if you go on a tour, these are the rules that you have to adhere to, and just to make sure that they are informed. And I think it's really important, and not to make the situation more beautiful than it is, but just to convey the message as it is. What is the situation on the ground? And I think that in the content that we create for our blogs or social media, I think in this current situation, is more important than ever, to have content that's authentic and that really reflects the real situation.
Yes, yeah, especially the authentic content. I agree with that. I mean, we've seen all those photos in the past, standing in the flower fields or in the lavender fields.
Yeah,
that's, well, yeah, would be a strange photo with a mask on right now.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a couple of photos of Venice, for instance. And what's so funny was, in the past, people had to Photoshop the crowds out of the photos at St. Marco's Square. Now they don't have to. Yeah. And yeah, and but also it's important to show that exactly, you know, that there are people, you know, that it's important to wear a mask in a crowded area and wherever you go, and you know, to have that in your content as well. If you're wearing a mask and you're taking a photo or a selfie or whatever, you know, don't take off the mask for, you know, to make it look more aesthetically pleasing or anything. I think it's important to show, you know, what you're doing there.
You guys, you run the blogs professional for many years, which means you make a proper income with that. Now, well, income broke away in the last couple of weeks, for both, for sure. And when we talk about recovery campaigns, big question now: pay or not to pay? What's your feeling about that? Who wants to answer that one?
Okay, I'll go.
Go ahead.
I think it still stands that, you know, if you're producing a bulk of work, then you should be compensated and be paid. But also at this time, much like we've been talking about goodwill gestures as well, it could be that, you know, you're reaching out to people that you've worked with before, that you have a really good relationship with. And it could be that, you know, you might be lowering your rates for the time being or for the foreseeable future, which isn't great for anyone, but it's something. So there's that approach, but there's a two-pronged approach to this anyway. There is the mobilization of fans, as it's called in crisis recovery, where you take those existing ambassadors that you have and you might ask them to share one story, like one positive story. And that could be something that as a fan, you just do out of goodwill, as Janice was touching upon. Or it could be like what we've been doing with a lot of the European destinations. There's a longer approach to sharing. There's more than just one positive story. There's a strategy to it and the types of stories that we're putting out and when and how much. And that takes a lot more time and a lot more work. And that's when you can start discussing compensation for that. But just be aware that people just do not have the money. And I think there's a misconception that all of a sudden, you know, there's this money waiting in a pot for recovery, and it's not, because governments had to reallocate budgets across the whole country for their economic recovery. And a lot of that money came from the tourism boards, which are government run. So I just want to put that out there, that just to quash this misconception that there is a ton of money, there isn't. So it's up to you to negotiate what you feel is right, what you feel can be a goodwill gesture, and what you feel is the best compensation, knowing that these people are struggling as well.
Someone else?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Becky just said. It's really a case-by-case basis, and it depends on the investment of time. But of course, the budgets are not there like they were. And just as Becky was saying, you know, I know here in Florida, a good part of the tourism tax is from hotel stays. And I think for the first time since ever, that has gone, you know, below $1 million in the last month, and it's $1 billion industry. So the tourism dollars just aren't there. And so, you know, you do have to weigh in what your investment of time is versus what you're just doing for goodwill with past tourism partners and people that you know, that you worked with before, that you just want to see succeed. So, you know, if you can help them in any way, and it's not a large investment of time, you know, I think it's okay to do that as just goodwill and good PR and not expect to be compensated. But if it's a multi-part campaign and stories that's going to take up some of your time working, then maybe something can be negotiated. Maybe it can be a lower rate. But I know in all of our conferences, we've always talked about diversifying your income and having a niche. And so now more than ever, it's been more important for that. So that way you can stay afloat in these crazy times and you know, still work and still provide recovery assistance in any way that you can.
Yeah.
And Mel,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Melvin, I think also, you know, we're in a different world at the moment in terms of travel, but we're also in a different world in terms of business. And, you know, the business models that we were all using a year or two ago just don't really fit into the current situation. So, you know, I can tell you, like in my particular case, traveling around Australia, what I'm actually doing is sort of dovetailing a few things into one. So I'm working with tourism boards who are, you know, covering all the costs like you would for a normal fan trip, because I'm producing content for newspapers more traditional print articles and the newspapers are paying me, the tourism boards aren't paying me any extra like they may have in the old model, because I'm creating content for a new website, an Australia dedicated website, which has no audience at the moment because it's brand new. So they shouldn't
tell
be
the
paying
name,
me.
please, so that we can all check it out.
So, oh, well, good. Check it out. Go on Facebook, everyone, and have a look at Travel Australia Today, or you can go to travelaustraliatoday.com. But the point is, I probably wouldn't have worked with tourism boards in this way previously, but you have to, I think, accept that everyone is in a different situation. And so this is how I've sort of constructed a situation where I can build a new brand without having to outlay any of my own money, which I probably would have had to do normally. And I might be able to do that by combining it with print articles where the newspaper is paying me for that content. So it's kind of a different thinking that I probably wouldn't want to have done a year or two ago, but it's working right now. And I think bloggers have to bloggers and DMOs that we're working with, or brands we're working with, have to be clever and say, okay, like, what can we do now that actually suits everyone? Everyone can either be investing in the future or combining different monetization strategies into one, things like that, and also I think being flexible and understanding that both brands and DMOs and bloggers and writers are having to do that. And so, sort of be able to compromise and talk about a situation that suits everyone.
Yeah. When a question really also for everyone, like you've been in contact with your clients and partners, and there's for the audience, please leave questions in the chat here at the bottom of it, and we can get to those pretty soon. Here's a question from Kerman, and he asked, is anyone working with brands to communicate their travel restriction policy?
Not right now, no.
No.
Not right now. So you've been in contact with partners and clients, and when you've been sharing their content, or when you've been sharing working together in the last couple of weeks, have there been specific requests on the content you create and share? How is that situation looking like? Do they say, don't say this, or show me the content first? Keith, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the tourism boards that we work with has, there was a certain part of the destination which got itself into a pretty sticky situation at the start of the crisis, and so it was important for us who are participating in our social media campaign to address that. Well, not address that sensitivity, but actually just to not talk about it, that part of the destination. And also, I think what was really important as well was to focus on not so much on areas where a lot of people congregate, but more the outdoor and the nature, going out on long hikes and stuff like that. So it was, so I think because of what happened in that destination, the tourism board was obviously very sensitive to the content that the bloggers intended to post. So we actually created a process where the content would get pre-approval, but then during the briefing, it was, the theme was more a lot about hikes and outdoor nature activities and all that. So I mean, the pre-approval process was really quick, and it was all fine. It was, the most important thing, I think, was just to avoid talking about nightlife and stuff like that, which got this particular part of the destination into trouble in the first place. So
it was pretty much more like being careful, not using a wrong word, maybe creating a complete shitstorm, what you can create so quickly, right? It's not really about the bloggers obviously still had their own message to share and to tell,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. You know, the messaging didn't change really. I mean, because I think the themes that we chose, which were about nature and outdoors, that already basically avoided, you know, the troubles that happened there. So there was really nothing what that was easy to avoid, and and you know, and I think
What kind of, just in between, what kind of content was it? Was it like, were the bloggers in the destination, or was it content from?
no, it was content that was created before. So the content that's already existing on the blogs, on our social media posts, videos, and so the whole campaign was basically about reposting content that the bloggers already had, and so the bloggers were briefed about these are the themes that we're covering, and you know, there's bits about family travel, there was bits about outdoor nature, and obviously food. So these were the themes that were covered, and then the bloggers were invited to come up with a content plan, which they then proposed to the client. The client just then approved it, and then that was that. Yeah.
Okay, this is now the situation in the past where we were all stuck in home office. And one of the next steps, like in Europe, we already said the borders are opening. So the next step would be going on actual campaigns and trips again, and also for the group again. Like, so would you expect an itinerary? What's do you have, like, when you think of this kind of trip, what do you have in mind?
Yeah. That's a bit of it's tricky, isn't it? You know, and there are a lot. I think all of us want to start traveling again, but we are very well aware of the risks, and I think you have to be very careful about what kind of project, like Rochelle just mentioned just now as well, that she was invited to this place and now there's a spike to this place. Like, I don't want to go there. And I think, you know, we're all in the same situation as well. You know, I mean, sure, the borders are open. Yeah, I can go to France if I jump into my car this afternoon. I could be there this evening. You know, but I think we have to be very well aware of the risks and you know, and act accordingly. Yeah, it's a tough one. It really is. But I think we have to look at it on a case by case basis. You know, especially where we're going, who we're working with. I think, you know, group trips are perhaps not a good idea at the moment. Individual trips, definitely, you know, just bringing in a blogger to your destination, either as a single blogger or maybe a couple, but not so much group trips. And just making sure as well, reassuring the blogger. I think that's really important. Number one, the bloggers have to be aware of the risks. So, you know, they have to make sure that they've got sufficient health insurance, etc. And then on the other hand, just on the client side, maybe the destination, reassuring the bloggers as well that if something does happen, you know, if the borders close overnight and you can't get back to your home country, you know, that you have some sort of a plan ready. I think that's really important as well.
This is because obviously it can happen that a second wave suddenly happens from one to the other day, and then you might be really stuck. And I think that is something where you really need to talk to your partner up front and really think about all possibilities, right?
Yeah, and you know, you have these apps now as well, which, you know, you can check every day. You know, just checking the news every day, you know, to make sure that, you know, what's happening in the place that you're in. And we have this well, in Germany you have the app now, the Corona app, and where you can check also on a very local basis, you know, where the spikes are, or, you know, what the situation is. So I think, you know, as bloggers, we're traveling, and there are these platforms available where you can get the information. And I think that that's also an important thing for us to do when we're traveling, if we travel. And we come across these platforms which provide really good information to share it with our readers as well, who may be traveling after us and going to the same places, and that they know, okay, here there's this platform or this website or this app that will give me up-to-date information about the situation, about the local situation. So, which would, allow them to make better decisions as well. So I think that's definitely something that we should be doing.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point, because I mean, there's so much noise out there. So like providing the right and responsible information, talking about responsibility and how travel might go into the future. Is this like a chance also to change the way of travel? We know that the many destinations have troubles of over-tourism, responsible traveling. Becky, I think you are very much into this topic. Like, is this a chance right now for directing the way people travel?
Melvin, we are running a bit over time.
We started late. Okay, no, yeah, okay. Maybe we can just to get to the end very quickly share the screen again. Okay, one more question. I don't know what that is. That's gone. To get into the crisis, and Keith, you run also the Social Travel Summit, and this was one, like crisis communication was one of the topics. Can you very quickly just like to end the session with that, say something to that, and where people can get more information?
Sure. So every year we organize the Social Travel Summit, which is a gathering of professional travel bloggers and content creators with the tourism industry. And one of the big parts of the Social Travel Summit is the think tank, where we give a group of bloggers and industry people a couple of topics to discuss, and their findings are then put into this report. And we've talked quite a lot about so many different topics, and actually crisis communications and working with bloggers during a crisis was one of the topics we discussed. I think it's the one in 2017 in Kitzbühel, and these reports are there. You can download them for free, and they contain a lot of great information.
Okay, yeah, we can stop sharing the screen, and then I think, yeah, to end the session, I think working also in the industry for a long, long time, there's a huge chance and opportunity to communicate more and to work together and to make that work also in the future, in the next couple of weeks. We see that a lot of times it's always about the communication, and I hope that everyone like got a bit out of that. It's still like a surreal time. I think it will be very important to keep the discussions going. Feel free to connect to any one of us. Yeah, I think I'd just like to get active, and thanks for everyone for joining, for the experts. I myself, was at the beginning still like a bit nervous, but I'm getting into it, and I'm looking forward to work with all of you for the next couple of months, and to get us into the right direction again. Thanks a lot, everyone, and also for everyone who listened and joined for this session. And we have 2 more sessions in the afternoon, so with similar topics, same but different speakers, and it would be great to see you there again. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.